If you're like me, you probably get pretty frustrated with your vocabulary. You have a base set of words, which you're probably not very happy with, and all you can think about are the infinite number of words that you don't know. It's easy to get discouraged and to feel like you can't express yourself. The thing is, there's a whole bunch of low-hanging fruit on the edge of what you already know, the words you understand but aren't yet comfortable using. What's more is that you don't need to know every single word in the English language. Why? Because out there are random words like flying buttress, which you're probably never going to use in a day-to-day conversation. When instead, you could be focused on more useful expressions like keep it up, which is a great way to encourage someone to continue doing something positive, or low-hanging fruit, which is a common way in the business world to talk about tasks that are easy to do. You could also focus on improving your mastery of tricky words you already know, like would. So the question is, how do I get more comfortable using words I already understand? And how do I start to learn more of this useful stuff? The answer? Collect, use, get feedback, and repeat. Here's the method I recommend to do just that. The best way I know to collect new expressions is through active listening. This means instead of just sitting and listening to music or TV to get a general understanding of the context, you'd spend 15 to 20 minutes really digging into what you hear, either by trying to repeat sentences out loud or writing down every word you hear and comparing it to the transcript or subtitles. During this active listening exercise, you'll want to look up words you don't know, especially those that prevent you from fully understanding the conversation. But then the most important part is asking yourself this question: can I see myself using this in a conversation tomorrow? If the answer is no, then it probably isn't worth your time. If the answer is yes, then it's time to add it to your collection, which can either be a list in a notebook or apps like Anki on your mobile device. Wherever your collection is, it's important to write down new words and expressions with context. That means instead of just writing down the word by itself with its definition, write down a few example sentences using the word appropriately. You can get these from the video you're doing active listening with, or from a conversation with a native speaker. Next, it's time to use these words, ideally through deliberate practice. I'd recommend starting with a personal goal of 5 to 10 new words or expressions a week that will be your focus for that week. What is deliberate practice? This could be anything from the deliberate writing technique that I explain in my Improvable Writing video, where you write a draft, translate it, compare your draft to the output of an online translator, make corrections, and finally get feedback from native speakers. You could also simply talk to yourself out loud for 10 to 15 minutes a day in English, or do language exchanges with native speakers, either ones you know or ones you meet through language exchange apps like Tandem or HelloTalk. Regardless of which one of these you do, the goal is to try to use these 5 to 10 focus words as much as possible in these exercises. Of course, to really get comfortable with new vocabulary, you need to learn where it fits and where it doesn't. You can discover this by taking risks with your deliberate practice. This means trying to use your 5 to 10 focus words in your writing or conversations, even if you're not 100% sure they fit. And then be sure to pay attention to the feedback native speakers give you when they're reviewing your writing or you're talking to them in a language exchange. If you get corrected because you used the word wrong, that's a good thing. Don't feel bad. By making a mistake, you learned where the word doesn't fit, and if you were a little embarrassed or even excited to receive a correction, you've now attached that word to a strong memory, increasing the odds that you'll remember it. At this point, you'll want to update your collection, whether digital or in a notebook, with what you learned from your correction. Maybe it's adding another example sentence or erasing one you thought worked but really doesn't. Let's try to use this method right now. I'm going to tell you a short story, and we're going to try to pay attention to some of the more interesting words and expressions. We'll also use them actively along the way. First, listen to the whole thing, and then we'll look at it sentence by sentence. When it comes to learning new words, there's nothing like active practice. If you want something to stick, you need to use it frequently. When you passively watch TV, it's likely your brain lets a bunch of words you don't know pass it by. In fact, half the battle of learning new words is simply getting your brain to notice the interesting ones. Alright, time to dig into the details. When it comes to is a very common and natural way of introducing a new topic or aspect of a topic. We typically use it by saying when it comes to, followed by a general topic, for example, movies, singing, etc., followed by the specific thing you want to say about it. Consider this example. What's the general topic being discussed here? We could say it's music. The specific thing about music is that Mozart is your favorite composer. So putting it all together, how could you introduce this topic in a very natural way using our expression? When it comes to music, Mozart is my favorite composer. Here's a more challenging one. How would you change this sentence to introduce the topic of sports in a more interesting way? Of course, the general topic is sports, and the specific thing about it is that Kevin is the worst. So that means our sentence should be, Kevin is smart, but when it comes to sports, he is the worst. Now that we've played with this expression actively, it's time to write it down, either in a notebook or an app. Remember, it's typically more useful to write new words down with context, as opposed to just writing down the word or expression by itself. In this case, we could write one or two expressions using when it comes to, such as when it comes to speaking English, I'm a pro, or she knows a lot, but when it comes to cooking, she's clueless. There's actually another pretty useful expression in this sentence. There's nothing like. We use there's nothing like to describe something as the best thing, or something extremely enjoyable. For example, how can you change this sentence to sound more natural and interesting, instead of just saying that watching TV with a cold beer is the best? After a long day of work, there's nothing like watching TV with a cold beer. It's so enjoyable for me that there is literally nothing else like it. Let's keep going with our story. If you want something to stick, you need to use it frequently. To stick is another way of saying to not be forgotten or to be accepted, typically in reference to a thing, a fact, a word, etc. How could you use it here? We are going to keep practicing until it sticks. Onwards. When you passively watch TV, it's likely your brain lets a bunch of words pass it by. To pass by typically means one of two things. Either you are traveling near a place, for example, I'm going to pass by your house on my way to work, or you ignore something or don't take advantage of it. For example, take time to relax and don't let life pass you by. In other words, don't ignore the good parts of life or don't miss the opportunity to do things you enjoy. In this usage, it's more common to put the person or thing that is missing an opportunity in between pass and by. How would you tell your friend to apply for a scholarship so that she doesn't miss the opportunity? Apply for the scholarship. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Time to finish the story. In fact, half the battle of learning new words is simply getting your brain to notice the interesting ones. Here, an interesting expression is half the battle, which is what we say to indicate that something is a very important part of achieving a goal. An important part of learning new words is noticing interesting ones. How would you complete this sentence using half the battle? If you want to get a promotion, showing up is half the battle. As a quick note, to show up is a useful phrasal verb that can mean to arrive or appear at an event. In this case, arriving at work every day is important for a promotion. Great, you've now collected 5 new interesting expressions. The next step is to try to use them. Let's give it a shot. Which of our 5 new expressions fits here? If you don't sign up for the trip, you're going to let a great experience pass you by. And how about here? I've got to be honest. Half the battle of raising kids is finding time to sleep. Next one. I hate studying, but when it comes to tests, I always do well. 2 more. If you want to be fluent in English, there's nothing like active practice. Last one. I hope we can get this new logo to stick. We've already tried 4 others. Perfect. We've collected 5 interesting expressions, and we spent a few minutes actively using them. The last step, taking risks and getting feedback, is up to you. Try using these in your next language exchange or the next time you go to write something. While it'd be great to have an easy button to just instantly remember words, there really is nothing like active practice to get them to stick. To get more advice like this, as well as other useful resources to help improve your English, head over to deliberateenglish.com. I'll see you there.